back to order. We are on to 5.1, adoption of the previous minutes. Does anybody have any concerns with the minutes? If none, looking for a motion to accept. Councillor Fraser? All in favor of that motion? Carried. We will move on to 6.1, delegation business. Just need a motion to accept the FCM task force presentation as information, please. Councillor Brown, all in favor of that motion? It's carried. And then we have the Zoom delegation from the Alberta Aerobatics Club, 6.2. Just looking to have a motion to accept as information. Councillor Phillips, all in favor of that motion? Carried. And we'll skip over number 7. There's no new old business. Move on to number 8. 8.1, new business. Mayor and Reeve recognition. And I will turn that over to Ms. Hartling.
Thank you, Your Worship. Back on December 15th, 2020, Council requested that administration bring back a report outlining options and costs to acknowledge past Town of Rocky Mountain House Reeves and Mayors. What I've done is I've provided some documentation. I also provided in the report some interesting historical information, which I hope you enjoyed reading through.
Very interesting.
Yes, yeah, I thought so as well. And I'd like to thank the Mountaineer for they provided some of that documentation to me. So in recognition of the generous contribution of past Reeves and Mayors, Council, I've provided signage options as well as site options. So Laura, if you could pull up the sign options. The option 1 is a laminate plaque with engraving, and the top plate would include a logo as well as the town name. The size of that plaque is 23 by 33 inches, and the cost, it would be with engraving and everything just over $1,200. Option 2 is a wood plaque. It's got brushed and black and brushed brass aluminum plate. It with engraving and the town name and logo as well engraved in the top. It would be around $657. Option 3 is a Lexan decorative sign with standoffs, removable lettering, town logo and headings. And install in this one is, this one does include the install, and that's $368. Option 4, again, is you can't really see it, but to the left where you see the little bolts, the sign that would hold the sign in place. So that's a Lexan decorative sign. Again, it's got removable lettering, the town logo and headings, and that is 48 by 36, which is the same size as option 3, and that would be $650. And then option 5, which is to the right, is it's basically got 3 Lexan plates on there with the bolts, standoffs, removable lettering, town logo and headings, 48 by 60, so that's slightly larger, and that one would be around $1,200. If you could close, the site options, and if you could pull that up, thank you. So I have provided some options here. If you look to the left, you'll see the floor plan of the arena lobby. So this particular one with the wooden slats is just when you walk into the arena, it would be just to the left, and it would be on the wall that kind of backs onto the ice rinks there. That's location A. Location B is just as you head up the stairs to go up to the gym. And location C is just as you enter the arena lobby. It would be just to the right of the reception, just past reception. And then location D is it's just on this side of the subway room door. so between the washrooms and the subway room. So just, I guess one note is that the Lexan signs are more kind of in line with the subway room in terms of the style of the signage. And because a plaque I find is, it's engraving, it's small. So people would have to walk right up to the sign to see it. Whereas with some of these other signage options, the 48 by 36, it would allow for larger lettering, which you could see from a further distance. So administration is looking for council's direction on this.
Okay. So I just have a question about up where we have since now moved the Twin Town display.
Yes,
Is there room up there?
there is room up there. I actually went up there.
Okay.
I should have provided a picture, but I did go up and look, and there is there's some wall space up there. There's one just to the right of the Kamakawa display, and then there's a large wall just basically, I guess it would be backing onto the Rotary Room as well.
Because I think it would be nice to, have a little bit of history, more of town history as well, not just the plaques, but eventually have kind of where we've come from. And if we're going to do this, kind of explain why there were reeves, why there are mayors now, and just give everybody the possibility to learn about our community. And I think we've already sort of started that one corner up there with our Twin Town history. And so I'm kind of liking that area, but Councillor Fraser, then Councillor Narang.
I really enjoyed the Lexan sign, especially because of the price tag, because I also had the thought, if we're doing the mayors and the reeves, it might also make sense. I know that you do the mayor's award, and then I can never remember the environmental award each year. There we go. I never say her last name right. But it might allow us to showcase some of the community members that were active in the community, although they weren't serving as the mayor or the reeve. And if the sign's a lot less than a single plaque in a lot of the other options, I think that would be kind of an interesting counterpoint. You've got the governance and you also have the community, and they kind of go hand in hand. So that was my suggestion.
Yes, and I agree. And I guess I was also wondering about vandalism and which would be the easiest one to clean off if somebody did write on it, or have we checked that possibility out as well?
Your worship, just with regards to the Lexan signs, there is an acrylic kind of like a film that would go over top.
Okay.
And just because of COVID as well, I asked about having those surfaces wipeable. And if the letters were there without the acrylic cover, then, constant wiping could start to peel those letters away a bit, but they're able to put an acrylic cover on there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Narang?
I like the Lexan signs also, but I'm curious about that space where we do have the Twin Town display. Like, is there any traffic up there anymore? Like, or unless Wes is just like the town expert now in the Twin Town?
Yes, I could speak a little, obviously right now with the Fazurcos, they've got, regular operations. It's minimal. I think when Renee and I talked and looked at the various locations, obviously the lobby downstairs gets more traffic. The upstairs, fitting it in with the Kamakawa, it's there, and maybe it's a way for us to, I don't know, how do we direct more people up to that area to see those displays? But
Yeah.
right now, and from my experience and my time here, there's not a lot of real traffic. The young people used to come over the lunch hour and find a spot to sit and have their lunch, and those types of things, but the general public don't spend a lot of time wandering the halls in the upper level.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking during events at the arena, you don't see a lot of people going up there. So if we're trying to display our community, it might be better to even bring that Kamakawa display somewhere that people are like, oh, what is that? When they're going to the curling club or going to the cafe or whatever.
Okay, good point. Councillor Phillips and then Councillor Narang, or Fraser?
I like the Lexon scenario as well, or option 4, the frosted glass. Upstairs, I hadn't thought about creating that into like a history of town of Rocky Mountain House. Maybe that is a good scenario for up there. I know there's not as much traffic as there is downstairs by the subway room and in that area. Barring moving it upstairs, my option would be to put it down by the subway room on that wall, as opposed to the wood structure walls. I think it might get a little bit lost on those structures. So I would say option 3 or 4, but I do like that scenario of going upstairs. It sounds like it might be an interesting idea.
I guess I'm suggesting that because I don't know where are the other plaques for the sports and the athletics going. You know, I'd hate to take away from that, because I believe that that's really important as well, to showcase, you know, the awards and the accomplishments of the sports as well. So
I think prior to us reorientating the gym space, that wall just by the curling lounge where the tables and chairs were set up was where we sort of had earmarked for those other display cabinets for the hockey and the other sports. But again, with things being relocated, we'll reevaluate that when we can get back to that situation. We've had lots of comments, people enjoying the extra space of the gym. But I know that the Craft Guild has also done, you know, additional tile work and stuff upstairs. So I think keeping in that area and theme of displaying, you know, the other community events. Right now, the current Wall of Fame is in the lobby of the Bunch Arena. You know, it'd be nice to relocate some of those to a more prominent, and if everything gets moved up into that sort of upper administrative area, I think it's a matter of them promoting that that's where things are located.
sure, sounds good. Thank you. Councillor Fraser and then Councillor Brown.
You actually beat me to it. My question was, where are those sports displays going? And now that we have some sports displays, we have the sports achievements, it just might be really interesting with that walk, the art walk up there, to have, you've got sports, you've got fine arts, you've got governance. It'd be kind of an interesting, I don't know, appetizer of the history of Rocky Mountain House without being the full museum.
Yeah, did you want to answer to that, or, because, okay. Oh, I have Councillor Brown. Is it, okay?
I was just gonna suggest, I think that building upon that is a great idea, and then maybe we could have like a little, with like the passport, the downtown passport, you know, find this in the arena, might just get people moving around there, so I think that we can work with it for sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, Councillor Brown?
Okay, I think the passport idea is a phenomenal one. I like it. Options 1 and 2, I think, look pretty dated. Even an old guy thinks they're old. I like option 5 specifically because it separates the Reeves from the mayors and identifies the fact that the town has gone through change at some point, and it pulls our history up a little bit more. So as far as location, I like either B or D, but I can certainly see the benefits of having it upstairs as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Auld?
I'm just going to agree with Randy that option 4 or 5 would be my preference, and I agree with everything upstairs. It makes it flow nice and gives the public a good variety of where we've come and where we're going. So I agree with that.
Okay, it's just such a nice, bright spot up there as well with those benches. It's a great little alcove, and I think it's underutilized, and maybe this would make it more prominent.
We could add seating up there too.
Sure. Sure.
Your worship, there is a lot of wall space up there for developing something. Oh. Yes, through your worship it would, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So it sounds kind of like we have direction then. Sign-wise, we just have to narrow that down. Options 1 to 5. What am I hearing is the majority? Councillor Narang?
I would suggest, I like option 5. I think it's something that is, while it is the most expensive option, it also just shows the growth in the community, and it gives a lot of room for that as well too. So, and I think it would look nice in that area because it is a lot of wall space to cover, so.
Sure.
Your worship, just on option 5, it is very easy to add to as well. Like if we were to add more signage to it, it would be easy enough to do. So,
Okay.
okay.
Well, that makes sense then.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Do we have any more discussion? We do have a resolution here, so I think we're pretty clear on option here. Councillor Fraser?
I was wondering if, perhaps not for this motion, but if it could come back for option 3 for some of those, the community awards and names, because I think that also makes sense up in that space. Just,
So that could be further direction
Yes.
to admin then? Perhaps in an admin inquiry or?
yes, we can do that, yeah.
Okay.
I'll add it.
Okay, so we have a recommended alternative in front of us. And it sounds like option 5 for the signage to be placed at location. Yeah, it's still.
Your worship, would you like me to read
Sure.
resolution?
Okay.
Be it resolved that council instruct administration to proceed with the Reeves and Mayor's Recognition Project with option 5 signage to be placed at the location next to the Kamakawa display on the second floor at a cost of $1,200 with funds allocated from council public relations budget.
Sure. Everybody good with that? Okay. Well, I'll make that motion then. Okay. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Good. Thanks for all of that work. This,
Yeah,
it's
you're
so
welcome.
interesting to read this. It
Yeah.
really is. And thanks to the Mountaineer for providing that
Yes,
as well.
thanks to the Mountaineer for sure. Thank you, your worship.
Sorry, my computer's frozen. Oh, there we go. So we'll move on to 8.2. Appointments to committees. So I was going to attend the Community Futures meeting on February the 18th, just to find out what was going on. That meeting was canceled. So Councillor Narang had expressed interest in sitting on Community Futures, and the next meeting, I believe, is March 18th. Are you still have that interest, or is anybody else interested in Community Futures? That we need to have a draw? Okay, so I just need a motion then to appoint Councillor Narang to the Community Futures Board. Councillor Phillips?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? Carried.
Do they send out an email or?
Renee will get, or Ms. Hartland will get all that for you, yeah. And also, I've been made aware that Councillor Phillips, so he was appointed to the Rocky Regional Library and the Parkland Regional Board. And through that board, you have been appointed to the executive.
Yes, the executive of the Parkland
Regional Library,
Board.
yeah. So we just need a motion to appoint, or have, I guess not appoint, is to accept Councillor Phillips' appointment to Parkland Regional Library's Executive Board. Councillor Brown?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? Carried, thanks. Okay, number 8.3, regionalized reopening. And I'll turn that over to you, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Your Worship. I mean, obviously, this is a little bit more of a contentious topic, but when the COVID regionalization shutdowns were implemented, it was done regionally. It started off in Edmonton and Calgary, branched out from there. We were the last of the parts of the provinces that had to go into the current shutdown that we were. And looking at the number of cases, which now is at 6, we're well below what the threshold was when they were implementing the first initial regional shutdowns, What I'm suggesting is that as a council, we send a letter to the province of Alberta suggesting that they look at regional reopening from COVID. Simply because right now, I mean, our pools aren't open, our arena's not open. Yes, the libraries have just reopened at 15% capacity, but it's not just, we need to get back to some type of normalcy, if I can say that word. There is a lot of mental health stress going on right now. And I realize that Edmonton and Calgary, they're a different scenario than what we are, but having only 6 cases in Clearwater County in total, I think it's worth sending a letter to the province asking them to reconsider regionalized reopening from COVID. COVID is never going away. It's always going to be part of the new flu strains. It's here to stay. Eventually, we have to get back to some type of reopening structure, and I think maybe now is the time that we ask the province to do regionalized reopenings. And I would advocate that Clearwater County should be one of those regions.
So, Dr. Hinshaw has very specifically said she would not agree to regionalized reopening. I do know that the town of Edson had sent a letter specifically asking that. I guess I just question, how would that work then? How do you see that as working? Like, how regionalized?
I mean, regionalized as in rural municipalities, Edson, Rocky Mountain House, Coronation, places like those that have low numbers. That's where this regionalized reopening should occur. Sitting at 6 cases, we're well below what the cases were when we were implemented in the first place. So we were, forced to go into a shutdown mode once we hit a certain mode. I think once we come below that, we should go back to at least the restrictions we had in November before we hit the purple zone. That's what my advocation would be.
So, sorry, can you just sort of explain, would that just be the town of Rocky Mountain House you're advocating for?
Well, primarily, yes, the town of Rocky Mountain House in Clearwater County, but also for the other municipalities in the province of Alberta that are going through the same thing we are, where there's little or no cases. They should be allowed some type of a regionalized reopening. And that's what I'm suggesting, that if we send a letter to the province, it may spurn more rural municipalities to send the same letter, and we can have some form of regionalized reopening, understanding that Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer are totally different things than what we have, but we should have some type of a reopening stage before those cities do.
So I guess my concern is, and I think that's why they went away from, and please correct me if I'm wrong, why they went away from regionalized is, how do you stop people from Red Deer coming into Rocky? How do you stop Rocky from going into Red Deer? How do you stop Edmonton from coming here? And we have a very transient workforce here right now. And so I guess those are the questions that I have, and I believe that's why Dr. Dina Hinshaw said the regionalized opening doesn't make any sense. So, yeah.
So I go back to last summer when we didn't have mandated masks. We had the West Country completely full of people from Edmonton and Calgary area, and our numbers didn't go up then. So it's been happening. It's been happening all along, where people from the other areas are coming here, but it hasn't, especially last summer, it didn't impact our numbers. Our residents are going to Red Deer. We know that. We know they are going to Edmonton and they are going to Calgary, yet we still sit at 6 cases. So I get that rationale and I get that understanding, but I don't see it making an impact on our number of cases.
I guess I tend to follow Dr. Hinshaw. I believe her information, but that's where I stand. There are a lot of people that certainly don't like the confusion of the constant opening and closing. And if we're heading into a third wave, which many are suggesting we are, I think we need to just really ramp up and do what we can to stop it and only stay at 6. I'd hate to open, don't get me wrong, I want everybody open. But is it safe, and is that responsible to suggest that that is safe, to advocate for reopening when the cases, and especially the cases of the variant are rising. I'm not medically trained, and so I have to trust the scientists and the medically trained personnel on this. And I know it's contentious. I know there are many people that say, it's a flu, it's nothing, but I do believe we have to trust our medical professionals. So Councillor Narang, and then Councillor Fraser.
Just curious, don't we have a motion already on the books stating that we would support the Alberta Public Health measures, that would be our position? We've already had that conversation, was my understanding? And I also agree, I think that it's important that we toe the line as far as at least the province goes. I don't believe in regional openings. They're having issues with it in Ontario right now as it is when they were attempting those types of things. And I agree, I think we just follow what Dr. Dina Hinshaw is directing us to do.
I can completely understand the frustration. I want things open as well. My only concern, aside from the fact that people will move between regions, is actually some of the frustrations that I've heard about the second stage reopening as it is. What numbers? What are the benchmarks? And every time she's asked, okay, how many? Well, but we're also using this number, and we're also it's difficult enough to get a clear path forward when you've got everybody focused on the numbers for the entire province. Statistically, some place like Rocky Mountain House with a small population is incredibly susceptible to statistical distortion. For us, 10 cases was the 50 per 100,000. So it might work in our favor today when we're at 6 cases, but it would be very frustrating if it was set at that 50 per 100,000 and we're completely shut down at 10, whereas there's more cases in Red Deer, but because they have more people. I just think that when you've got areas with small populations, basing opening and closing on statistics is, I know that the people here would be very frustrated if Red Deer was open because statistically their numbers were lower than the actuals, just because that would be how the province would need to set it up. It's just really high risk, mathematically speaking.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I think as a council, we've determined long ago that we were going to follow public health from the outset. And I think just to be consistent, we should continue to do as we determined we would earlier and support public health in our decisions.
Councillor Auld, did you? Okay, Councillor Phillips?
So I'm not suggesting that we don't follow what the province mandates to us. I'm definitely not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is that we send a letter to the province asking them to look at the situation. And I know we made a decision a month ago. However, this COVID response is changing every day. There's new information, there's new things coming out. A decision that was made a month ago may not be relevant today, and that's all I'm asking, is that we look at it and is this something we should do for the residents of our town? I believe it is. I'm being approached by, members of the church community, the business community. I've talked to some people in the mental health industry. It's not just COVID, and I think we all understand that mental health is being impacted at a rate that we just don't even know what is being caused. But there is irreparable damage going there. I just think that it's time that we ask the province to look at a regionalized approach. I know they said they haven't, but I think it's time that we mandate it, or not mandate it, ask them to reconsider. And we follow whatever rules they set for us.
Councillor Auld?
I agree with everybody. I agree with Len. I agree with everybody else regarding following what Dr. Hinshaw says. The problem I have with sending a letter asking the government to do anything is that they have no idea what they're doing today, and they have no idea what they're going to do tomorrow. So it's going to get put in a pile. It's going to get wasted min time, our time, when they cannot come up with a decision and stand by it to begin with. as much as I want everybody to be open, businesses, everybody, unless everybody just stops obeying the orders, nothing's gonna change. Which I don't advocate, but I do know that there's a lot of businesses in town that have just stopped. They've stopped following the rules, stopped following what they're doing. We can't condone that, but I understand where their frustrations are at. But I don't think sending a letter to the government is gonna do anything but add a paperweight.
And I echo everything. I feel the same. Unfortunately, there are lots of businesses and gyms that are not able to open yet. And we have to follow so that those businesses can get opened again. There are our theater, our recreation facilities. It's just not financially feasible to open our facility right now at the stage that we're at. And I'm pleading with everybody to have patience for just a few more weeks, wear the masks. Let's try and maintain our number at 6, and because we're there. And let's think about our businesses that aren't open yet, because there are many and they are really hurting. And so that's where I'm coming from. I will wear that mask. I don't like it. I will wear it and hope that is helping, because they're telling us that is helping. So, Councillor Narang?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we're at 6 is evidence. Well, it's either evidence that people have stopped getting tested, or it's evidence that the public health measures, as frustrating as they are, is working. So I cannot agree to send a letter telling Dr. Dina Hinshaw what she should be doing and how she should be reopening. What happens if we send a letter saying open regionally, and all of a sudden as a result of that the numbers go up? I don't want that on my shoulders at all. I think we're just getting so close, and we are so tired and so done. But you can see the numbers are coming down. We just really gotta stick it out, I think. And yeah, I'm with you. Wear the mask, do the things. Yeah, it sucks. There's no other way to put it, but I would not be in favor of sending that letter.
Councillor Brown?
I think the fastest way to get the freedom we're all looking for and hoping for is, and I think the most direct route is just follow what we've been asked to do. And as the mayor said, just exercise a little bit more patience, and hopefully it won't be too far along the road.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips?
So we've had this discussion. I'm not sure if we have any more discussion on this matter.
Nope.
I would still like to make a motion. I know how my fellow colleagues are thinking. I get it. I understand it. I've just been getting inundated with requests to look at some type of regional reopenings. So I would like to make a motion that the town of Rocky Mountain House send a letter to the province asking them to consider regionalized reopening from COVID-19.
Okay, is everybody, Renee, you have that motion? Everybody clear on that motion? Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of that motion? All opposed? Okay, that motion is not,
Defeated.
the motion is defeated. Oh, man. Okay, thanks, Councillor Phillips. was the general feeling.
Yeah, and even just hearing from AUMA and FCM, they themselves said that it's going to cost more money to have a provincial police force than it does to keep the RCMP. And when creating a provincial police force, the biggest obstacle is going to be where does that the level of expertise end, because the RCMP has it. When you recreate it, you've got to either bring that in or you have to recreate it yourself, which can become very expensive. So there wasn't a lot of positive indication about building a provincial police force, other than the fact that Alberta would have more say in what goes on with its own provincial police force. Other than that, RCMP was advocated as staying norm.
So Airdrie had just recently done a study, and they found out through that study that it would be far more costly to have a city police force than it would be to have the RCMP, and then they would have to call on the RCMP anyways. It just sounds really confusing to me. So I'm wondering if we should be sending a letter as well to Minister Madu, saying that, or do some more research. I don't know. But really what I'd like to see them focus on is the police funding model, because there was a lot of discussion around that as well. And yes, there are other municipalities that are now paying for that. It still seems inequitable. It seems unfair. Some of the small villages, it's causing huge financial burden on them. Perhaps, we could suggest something like looking at a per capita, the same thing as the school requisition, because I don't know why that hasn't been looked at, because to me that makes the most sense. And am I missing something, that it couldn't just be that easy to go for the same model as the school requisition? So anyways, I'm saying, could we send a letter instead to Minister Madu, encouraging him to please, that's a lot of money to do this study on a provincial police force when the majority of municipalities don't want this. So Councillor Narang and then Councillor Fraser.
Yeah, and I think it's funny, just to your comment about, am I missing something? Because that's how I've often felt dealing with this police funding model for the last 4 years. It's never made sense. I've never been able to wrap my own head around it, and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't a per capita based funding model. So I completely agree with you. And also, if you're looking at message boards on Twitter and Facebook and all the places where they're discussing the creation of a provincial police force, residents don't want it either. They want no part of it. There's a certain group of people in Alberta that support all types of that, all things Albertan. But for the most part, what I'm seeing is that people don't want that cost either. So, and there's a lot of loyalty, I want to say, to the RCMP as well, or like that commitment, that Canadian sort of imagery with RCMP. But there's some history there too. But yeah, I don't think that people want this, so I'm not sure why it's being so heavily promoted.
Councillor Fraser?
I, as soon as I start looking into it and thinking about it, all the specialty services that the RCMP is able to provide, because they are Canada-wide, from forensics to, SWAT, homicide detectives, dealing with Canada-wide drug trafficking. If you stop at the Alberta borders, it's 1970 again, and that isn't helping deal with crime on a macro level as well. So to pull ourselves out of that policing circle and spend more money, it doesn't make any sense.
Councillor Phillips?
So, the RCMP does do a great job. There's no doubt about that. But looking back at the police funding model for the municipalities under 5,000 people, it was very clear when they were showing us the graphs of how much per population or per person is being paid towards policing. As soon as Alberta, and we looked at the other provinces in Alberta as well, as soon as we got to Alberta, it dropped off to almost zero for the populations under 5,000 that was being paid. And that was the discrepancy between the other provinces, is it was very consistent, no matter if it was under 5,000, over 5,000, or up to 500,000. That's where the gap was, and that's where, as Mayor Burke said, the police funding model has to be made a little more equitable, because it is going to put a lot of burden on these populations under 5,000. I'm not sure what the answer is, but that's the problem.
Councillor Brown?
Just to Councillor Phillips' point, what do other provinces do? Are they doing it per capita? Like, why is there that drop off?
They did a per capita breakdown of different population sizes for towns. So they did under 5,000, over 5,000, and I think they did over 15,000, if I remember that slide correctly.
Is it in here?
It may be in I didn't see it in that package. But basically, they broke it down as to how much per person is paid under 5,000 population, over 5,000, and over 15,000. And they did it Quebec, Ontario, BC, and then they did Alberta. And we were very similar in every category except for the under 5,000, where it dropped down to, I think it was like $12 per person, whereas in the over 5,000, that's about I believe it was $120 per person.
So small communities in other provinces are paying.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
But in Alberta, it's not.
Oh, Councillor Ald?
I would just, what you said earlier, we need to support this, and it needs to get to be an equitable system so that everybody knows what they're paying, how they're paying it, why they're paying it,
Yes.
and be able to explain it to our residents. Right now, like Michelle said, we have no idea how to explain it, and it makes no sense. So I 100% think we should be supporting this.
It's based on a really old funding model, and, you know, so so would everybody then be in agreements to send a letter to Minister Madu saying basically what Crow's Nest Pass is saying, but then adding a paragraph on instead, could you please consider looking at the funding model that would make it equitable for all Albertans, not just, it wouldn't pit rurals against urbans, it wouldn't pit small against large, it would just be per capita, just like the school funding rec. So, okay, I just need a motion to send that letter. Councillor Narang?
Do I have to say it?
Renee has it, I think.
I do have it.
Okay.
Would you like me to read it back?
Sure.
Okay. Be it resolved that council instruct administration to send a letter to Minister Madu advising that the town is not in support of a provincial police force and encouraging the province to revisit the police funding model that would make it equitable for all Albertans.
Councillor Narang?
I don't know if this is the spot to add, but I'm wondering if we should invite our neighboring partners to be signatories on this letter, as it would impact all of us. Is that a reasonable ask, or is it enough to come from just the town?
Mr. Kraus?
Your worship, that would be up to council to determine if we want to include our partners. I mean, we are in different situations.
Yes.
I mean, the town is required under legislation to have our own police force. The town has chosen to contract the RCMP to supply our police force. It's a $1.9 million bill per year for us to have our own police force. Out in the rural, they're still not required under legislation to have their own police force. What they're required is to contribute to the funding for it. So, I mean, and that's going to be staged in for the rural municipalities over a period of 3 years, I believe. You know, so I think in this year it's, $500,000, where for the Clearwater County, I think it ramps up to just over $1 million in 3 years, or $1 million plus. But it still does not even equate to the 1.9 million that we pay per year. So even in 3 years, we'll still be paying more policing than the residents in Clearwater County would be, where actually majority of the population resides, right? So it's not an equitable system by any means. So so in regards to your question, I guess for Councilor Narang, it might be two separate issues, but I mean there is benefit that if both rural and urban municipalities get together and ask for an equitable system throughout the province, it'd be beneficial by joint.
I think there is, maybe we could just CC Clearwater County on this at this point, but I do think there is benefit for all of us, because it seems to always cause such angst when people just don't understand the model. They don't understand how the policing model is funded. And the other question that has never been answered is, whose debt level is a new police headquarters going to be on? Is that strictly going to be on the rurals debt level limit? Is that only going to affect us, or the Urbans, sorry? And those questions have to be answered. So I think this just might open a conversation, and maybe we CC it to RMA and AUMA as well. So Councillor Fraser and then Councillor Phillips.
The issue with the new formula, as far as I see it, is that they introduced it, it didn't actually reduce the debt load of the urban municipalities. They just taxed the rural municipalities with nothing to show for it. They haven't, they've taken in far more money than they've spent on any sort of programming. There's been no plan, there's been no communication as to what that money is being used for. So I feel like the rural municipalities feel like they've been taken for a ride. They aren't getting more services for the check they just wrote. And urban municipalities are frustrated because they've been paying the check all along and there's no relief there. It isn't equitable still. And I think both sides are frustrated. I think a equitable, defendable formula where you could say, this is how much you pay per capita for your police force makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Phillips.
And just to add to what Mr. Kraus had said about the $1.9 million we spend, so the town of Rocky, having its own police force, spends $1.9 million for 12 officers, and Clearwater, the provincial side of the equation is 16 officers, and Clearwater County would be spending just over $1 million. So we're spending $1.9 million for 12, whereas in 4 years' time, Clearwater County will be spending just over $1 million for 16. So there's the inequitable funding model that we're talking about.
Okay, Councillor Narang, did you want to add anything then to that motion, or is?
Would it be enough to add who we would CC it to? So CC to county, to RMA, FCM,
AUMA?
and AUMA, yeah. Not FCM, AUMA. Sorry, I've got my, yes, RMA and AUMA and Clearwater County. Yep, I'm not missing any.
Okay. Everybody's clear on that motion? All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to 9.2, Clearwater County Evergreen Co-op Public Recycle Roll-Off or Drop-Off Location. So we did send a letter. We didn't get a response?
Yeah, Your Worship, so maybe I'll just provide a little background to where we're at, and then it's for council's discussion, and maybe it's just to close the loop on the letter to Clearwater. So on February 11th, Clearwater County sent us a letter asking the town's approval for them to provide a municipal service of recycling behind the co-op within town limits, and asked for a response by February 17th. That went to our council on February 16th. Council passed a motion to postpone that consideration for approval until we had discussions on the eco center in town. Then the next day, on February 17th, we were informed by Clearwater, there's 2 letters, actually one from administration advising that they decided to not provide that service and would be pulling it out by February 19th. And then we received a letter from the Reeve on February 23rd, basically saying the same thing.
We've done all we can to ask and to get the county to include the residents in that eco center. I think we closed the loop and we've done our best we can.
Okay, any other conversation? So, do you need a motion to?
Your Worship, so just that council accept the February 23rd letter from Reeve Laird as information would close it off.
Okay, Councillor Auld makes that motion. All in favor of that motion? That's carried, thank you. So we'll move on to 9.3, Red Deer College invite stakeholder engagement for the strategic planning. I would like to take part in this as Campus Alberta Central member. And I'm wondering if Councillor Fraser, because you sit on the Rocky Learning Council, would you also want to take part in that?
Yes, I actually needed to, I'm taking part in, I think, the precursor to this one, so I would have no problem.
Which one are you taking or you're wanting to take?
I'm doing a roundtable with Central Alberta, Campus Alberta Central, and RDC was supposed to be on that discussion, so I actually think that's the smaller talk, but I would be willing to do this one as well.
So it looks like the next one coming up would be Thursday, March 4th from 5 to 6:30 and Wednesday, March 10th from 4 to 5. Like, okay.
Your
Sorry?
worship, so I've got for learner experience, I've got Thursday, March 4th from 5 to 6:30, Wednesday, March 10th from 4 to 5 with an Indigenous focus. And programs of the future, I've got Saturday, March 6th from 9:30 to 11:30, and Tuesday, March 9th from 5 to 7 p.m. evening, which is an evening council meeting, so,
Right, so that one doesn't work.
no.
I was gonna say, the March 4th one, I am available to do that one.
Okay.
So I will do the one on March 4th for learner experience.
Okay, and then I would do the one Saturday, March the 6th, from 9:30 to 11:30 for programs of the future. Does anybody see any benefit for their committees to take this? Or we can just, Councillor Fraser and I just bring back a report? Is that okay? Okay, so I think it's good that we'll take different ones then. So just a motion to authorize Councillor Fraser and myself to take part in the Red Deer College. Do you have something written? Future and, wait, where is it? Stakeholder engagement, Red Deer College stakeholder engagement. Yeah. Is everybody clear on that motion?
Yeah.
After I just butchered it. Sorry about that. Okay, all in favor of that motion? That's carried. Oh, for heaven's sake. Time for a break. I did.
Yes.
I'll make that motion. Is it time for a break again? Okay, all in favor of that motion that I just made? Carried.
This one is practice.
Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Auld. He's got to keep me on track. Okay, so 9.4, invitation to the 20th Annual Minister Awards for Municipal Excellence. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Kraus.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So administration would actually like to put a submission in for this under the service delivery innovation. Basically, you know, under the heading of reducing costs through environmental leadership, where we can, you know, highlight our CHP project at the pool, the Eco Center, our upcoming organics program, the SEEP program as we move forward on that, and like the LED lighting in the Christensen. So they're all, overall it's a, you know, combined environmental project, but it's reducing costs and better service delivery to the residents.
I think those are excellent ideas. Excellent. I would fully support that. So, any other discussion there? Okay, so we'll need somebody to make a motion. Councillor Phillips?
I'll make a motion that we provide a submission.
Microphone?
You're right, sorry. I will make a motion that we provide a submission to the province for the Service Delivery Innovation Award on behalf of the town of Rocky Mountain House.
Do you want to list what you had just said, Mr. Kraus, or?
Do I need to list, in regards to the CHP unit, the Eco Center, organics program,
Seep.
SEEP, and, yeah,
And LED lighting.
LED lighting, yeah,
Okay, good with that.
yes.
Everybody clear on that motion? Councillor Fraser?
Could we send that into the AUMA awards?
Mike?
We just received a letter about AUMA awards. There was an environmental category. Could we enter those projects for that category? At least it would share the information with other municipalities.
Good point, and I actually should be advocating for that because I'm on the Sustainability and Environment Committee, so that's a great suggestion.
Doing homework anyways.
Yes, Your Worship, so a second motion if
Okay, so we'll first of all, we have a motion on the table already, so all in favor of Councillor Phillips' motion? And that's carried, thank you. Councillor Fraser? Yep,
So move, what I said last time.
so you're making a motion?
I move that we enter the Town of Rocky Mountain House's environmental projects to the AUMA Environmental
Stewardship Award.
Stewardship Award.
Okay, clear on that motion? All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Awesome. Just a minute here. Okay, so 9.5, Recreation Board resignation. Ms. Hartling?
Thank you, Your Worship. So we received the resignation letter, and we've started the advertisement for the position. We've got it on the website and in the paper this week. And administration is just looking for resolution from council to send a thank you letter.
Okay,
Thank you.
Councillor Fraser?
Since I was on that board with her, I will make that motion.
Okay. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried.
One quick thing, in the new person that gets put in this position, will that only be until October, or will that go, like, span past October?
Through Your Worship, to answer Councillor Phillips' question, it would be to the organizational meeting in 2022.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So we'll move on to number 10, 10.1. I just need a motion, please, to accept 10.1 to 10.12 as correspondence for information. Councillor Auld? Okay, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Moving on to reports. Does anybody have any questions on my report? Okay, seeing none, just motion, please. Okay, Councillor Phillips?
Make a motion to accept the mayor's report?
Okay, all in favor of that motion? Carried. Does anybody have any, or we'll move on to 11.2, the councillors' reports. Does anybody have any questions regarding any of our council reports? Okay, I'll make a motion to accept councillor reports as written. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Moving on to number 12.1, the action list. Does anybody have any comments or questions on the action list?
Your Worship, if I could, so it's the February 2nd, 8.5, it's receiving water quality assessment. So administration has met with Alberta Environment. We talked about the financial pressures that the municipality's on, especially with our new wastewater facility starting construction, and that being a $27 million project, which is going to affect us going in the near future. So in meeting with the administration of Alberta Environment, it was agreed that we would send a letter requesting that that study be put off to a minimum of 2025, and not start until 2026. So administration has drafted that letter and has sent it off to Alberta Environment, and we're just waiting for approval to the amending that condition on our approval.
Good, that sounds great. Any questions around that? No? Okay, just a motion to accept the action list, please. Councillor Brown? All in favor? And that's carried. It is, oh, sorry, number 13. Does anybody have any administrative inquiries? Councillor Brown?
Just,
Mike?
oh, Mike, he's not here. Just a conversation earlier about the history of the town being displayed in public facility, the arena, Christian Sports and Wellness Center. I'm just wondering if it's possible to keep it in the back of our mind, or at least in the records, that we consider displaying those newspaper articles as well with that. I think we all found them interesting, and I think would be really interesting and possibly important for residents to see them as well. And I'm not asking that we look to do it at this time, but at some point in time when we expand our plans or create a plan on that, that's taken into account.
I guess we would just have to get permission from the Mountaineer to be able to do that. The Mountaineer itself has a long history in this community, so that in itself is historical, right? That they have all of that information, so great suggestion. Okay. Okay, we got it. Councillor Narang? Anybody else? Any other admin inquiries? Councillor Fraser, your microphone.
So I have been looking at whether it would be possible to work with Rocky Pride and doing some kind of nod and show of support in the community, whether it was a rainbow crosswalk or a mural or a walkway. And there've been several suggestions kind of sent to me, and I kind of wanted to list them out. And then my admin inquiry was whether they would work, whether they would make sense, or if there are other areas that I have missed just because admin is, or the staff is always out, so they might have better ideas. There was, if we were doing a rainbow crosswalk, the crosswalk that's right across from the Christensen Center, not the one that goes across the school, but the one that, the drop-off lane.
So,
You know what I'm saying?
okay, so your admin inquiry is it to look into the possibility of a rainbow crosswalk?
Yes, I'd look for the locations, just because it changes what the fundraising is, whether it's on a roadway or whether it's on the walking pathway or whether it's on asphalt. It just changes the kind of paint, and so it changes the kind of fundraising. And I'm also not sure of the rules around what we can put where. So that was the one suggestion. The other one was the walking path, somewhere
Okay.
on the walking path.
So Mr. Kraus is going to respond here.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So for Council Fraser, I think what I would prefer is the group to come meet with the administration,
Okay.
and we can walk through their ideas with them, and we can address, the pros and cons of each with them, and then we could bring it back to council for decision.
That sounds wonderful.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank
Good.
you.
Okay. Any other admin inquiries? No? Any notices of motion? Seeing none, and it is now 3:35. I will call for a 5-minute break, and when we come back, we will be going into closed session. Thank you.